It's 4 days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. It's 4 days to Halloween, Silver Shamrock. It's 4 days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. It's 4 days to Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
So you might have guessed by our presentation that we are looking at the Halloween franchise. Hello and welcome to This Week at the Movies. We had to start with a shout out to a movie that Eric and I love that not everybody universally loves out of this Halloween franchise, and that is the epic Halloween 3, if for no other reason than it is literally 8 days until Halloween. It is October 23rd, the iconic opening date of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, just one of many Halloween themed films we will be touching on this week. Eric, when you hear the dulcet tones of that theme song, what does it do for you?
It always reminds me that since the first Halloween, regardless of whether you love or hate different installments, every one that's come out since has disappointed people.
So true. So true. Well, as promised, we will be looking at Halloween 3, but we will get to that in a minute. The whole reason we kickstarted this is, Eric, did you know Halloween, the franchise, was over? I was told it ended on October 14th, although I know there's now some kind of change.org petition to throw the film out and reshoot it, but that's right.
Since Last Jedi, the petitions and petitions and petitions. Oh my.
Like, if you're not happy with the film, you go to change.org, and none of those have ever worked. But I guess it gives people a sense of peace. But we are talking about Halloween Ends, which was the end of the David Gordon Green trilogy. It did drop on October 14th, both in theaters and on Peacock. And you know what? I'm actually pretty excited because Eric and I both saw this movie and we have radically different opinions of the movie. And you know what, Eric? I'm going to let you go first.
Can you hear me?
I can indeed.
All right. I'm going to not touch that anymore. You want me to go first? Are you sure?
I mean, I've always heard if you can't say something nice, don't say something at all. And I don't really have the nice things to say.
So I almost notoriously detest Halloween Kills. I thought that it was a movie that equal parts takes the franchise seriously and jokes about it and does not care about the consequences of things that happens in it and just fell apart. And then I became enraged, if you've watched me on this film not rated, over commentary from David Gordon Green just completely missing the idea that people dislike the movie because of its unsubtle smack you over the face, evil dies tonight, it's been 40 years repetition. And so Halloween Ends, I was like...
That was definitely not the reason that people hated the movie.
No. He thought the reason people hated the movie was because the ending was unsatisfying. Like, oh, the ending left you wanting a resolution. And I was like...
We all knew there was going to be a trilogy, friend.
Yeah, there's so much else. Like, come on. And but poor guy, I can't imagine what it's like to have to cycle through these high-profile franchise, publicity crawls and whatnot. I get that that's rough, but just say, I don't know, we'll see what happens. People like what they like. Just let your work speak. Whatever. Basically, the point is I went to go see Halloween Ends, and my expectations were like, let's wait for more just brutally violent Michael Myers. Maybe we'll get to make some jokes with a couple of friends of mine, my wife and a friend, and just kind of, pick apart and rant about something. Maybe that's going to be the way we're entertained. And I got to tell you, from the start, the radio show, the tributing Halloween 3 opening title crawls, and a little bit of spoilers that I had beforehand kind of cut my expectations at the knees. And the movie that I ended up watching, I just didn't hate. So I'm just sitting here and I'm like, huh, I'm not like angry watching this. Interesting. And then I just 1, 2, or 3 things happened, and I just really got behind the characters that were there. And once that happened, and I just kind of embraced that the rest of the movie was going to be what it was going to be, because you can kind of really tell what's going to happen after about the first third of the movie being over. You can kind of tell what the main beats of the story are going to be. I just watched it happen. And after that, the only time that I was not upset, are we talking spoilers?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, we're talking spoilers. Only time after that,
People
that I
can
was
watch
like,
the movie for free. They don't even have to go to a theater. So
the only time, yeah. The only time I was upset after that, really upset, was Jamie Lee Curtis decides not to just stab Michael over and over and over and over again. Okay? I know she's a human, he's evil, you got to separate the two of them. I get it. And what they did was very, I think, right. I liked what they did with the ending. But that's the thing. I started piecing these things together. I was like, wow, this has been very quiet. Wow, I've really been okay with the characters. Wow, I do not mind what's happening here. And then the ending was thoughtful. This, that, and there was thoughtful. They're still smacking you all over the face with all of their unsubtle sort of what is evil stuff. But ultimately, I realized that I had enjoyed the mood and the atmosphere the entire time, and I didn't have to deal with all of like the intensity and like the momentum that had been built up from kills, and I just had a really good time watching this. And then the more I've sit on it and the more I've watched it, and I've rewatched it once, I almost love the movie. One thumb up.
You almost love the movie. I will cop to you. I didn't care for Halloween Kills either. I don't know what they were doing, but it definitely didn't work. I would say sidelining Laurie for a bulk of the second and third film in the trilogy was a choice. She's barely a supporting character in Halloween Kills. Go ahead.
Weird parallel here. Laurie's journey is Michael's coming into town and she has to protect the kids in Haddonfield. She spends the entire second movie in a hospital, unable to really help. And then the entire third movie is not about her or Michael. It's about
yeah, and so I get the maybe homage to Halloween 3, and if they would have just first of all, I don't know whether it was him or the marketing department, but it was entirely built up to be the climactic showdown. And if you watch any kind of trailer or marketing for Halloween Ends, now I know why they were all so short, because they didn't really have anything to build into that. If they would have made almost
the same footage over and over and over again, because they had like 10 minutes to work with.
I almost might have respected it more if there was a point in time in there where I thought they were going to try to say that Michael Myers actually died from his wounds, and this guy just like found his mask and and had like taken on that mantle because he was put upon. I almost would have respected that more. I still wouldn't have enjoyed it, but I probably would have respected it more. Yeah, that would you would have respected that more too. I guess it was somewhat satisfying that Michael got fed through a wood chipper, symbolically saying we are definitely not coming back to this. That was Jamie Lee Curtis being like, I've done way more of these than I ever anticipated, and I'm all the way out. Tonally, it was all over the place. I guess the biggest problem for me is I cared not one whit for Corey and his storyline, and I don't know what they were doing with Laurie's granddaughter, who had like, what was that famous like Patty Hearst syndrome going on or something, like she had been kidnapped by this guy and had just fallen for everything. I know, I'm sorry, I pulled out a really timely reference from the 70s, but hey, this film franchise dates back to the 70s. So none of it worked. And then you get to this kind of anticlimactic third act, their showdown, which almost, I couldn't, it starts out with her having a showdown with Corey, and that's where I thought, oh, they are actually doing this. He is, because up to that point, Michael hadn't really done anything, and you couldn't tell if Michael was just like a sewer figment of his imagination. And then he comes out, and you're like, oh no, I guess Michael's not too happy with somebody taking his thing. I ended up giving it 2 thumbs down. I gave it 1 star. It was just not my thing. I think it didn't know what kind of movie it wanted to be, and had it been one movie or the other, it might have salvaged itself. But since it rode this weird hybrid between both, I didn't care for any of what they were putting down. I've mentioned this in many times before. I think we'll touch on it in a minute when we look at the original, but the greatness of Halloween was this idea that Michael is kind of a supernatural evil that is unexplainable killing machine that just goes out. And anytime you've seen films in the franchise attempt to provide some kind of psychological explanation for the nature of evil, or for how these kind of killers get created. I mean, that was probably my biggest nitpick with Rob Zombie's take on it, is he just wanted to totally psychologically deconstruct the idea of what makes a killer. And they almost really verge into that with Corey's journey. And I don't know if part of it was my expectation of what the movie was going to be, and I was trying to figure out why we were spending so much time with this, milquetoast white guy who was picked on, that I never really was able to sink into his story and figure out what they were doing. But it just didn't work for me, and it's ostensibly not what I'm looking for.
I want to say real quick, I respect that opinion, because you're coming from a place that I'm not seeing with a lot of other reviewers, where it's the content and quality of what you watched and the merits of the performances and things that pull you one way or another. I think over time is going to reflect on this movie's like value, because everything that you're saying, it rings true to me, but it rings true in a way that, Michael Myers gets to be what he is. We see the reflection of him off of this milquetoast white guy. And it's funny to me that, like you mentioned, that I was talking with a friend that, like, I think there's something so poetic about it being a babysitter. And I feel like maybe in the writer's room, the idea was for this to be a female. But I think the idea of pitching a Halloween movie where a female became Michael Myers, there were just too many hurdles for people to approve that.
Well, and then they decided they wanted to like throw some unnecessary romance, because you not only have, Laurie's granddaughter and him, but you also have Laurie and the sheriff, which I'm like, I'm not into their meet cute in the grocery store. I don't know what you're doing.
Well, that is one of the things I will give to Kills, is they do have history. It's like the question since 2018. It's like, oh, were they a thing? Kills? Yes, they were a thing. And then ends. Can they be a thing? Or is she wrecked forever? And that's kind of the thoughtful thing about what works in these movies. I feel like that's a leftover from 2018, but that's kind of the hard part. Everything good about this is kind of leftovers from 2018.
That's the whole thing, though, too. If they wanted to do some kind of psychological exploration, I almost would have bought into, you get brief glimpses of where Laurie is trying to go a different way and be a positive person, and the people in the town who suffered largely blame her. And you get like that one sequitur outside of a grocery store, but you don't really come back to it, except for apparently all is forgiven because she's taking the body and throwing it in a wood chipper at the end. But there were threads that you could have potentially built on, but they introduce a ton of these threads. And it's almost, Alan Sepinwall is a critic I like, and he was talking about House of the Dragon, and there was so much potential, but the characters that had potential weren't the ones that the writers have chosen to focus on, which is why I don't like the season. And I sort of felt that way. But that struck me a lot about Halloween Ends. You have a bunch of different things that get thrown out as potential and possibilities of how you could go. And the ones that they chose to pour the most screen time and energy into were not the ones that I cared about, especially given what I was told this movie was going to be. Don't have Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers on the poster if you intend to have them in 5 minutes of an hour and 50-minute movie.
And it's anyone, like, I can see the arguments out there that that's not Michael Myers on the poster. Get out of here with that. That is not like.
I mean, it's been the same image for all 3 films. So was it Corey all? Is it like Agatha all along?
Oh man, what an amazing twist that would have been in the end. The guy in the sewer was Agatha all along. Oh,
yeah. Well, I think we belabored this one enough. I appreciate that we saw it differently. I appreciate what you liked about it. It just, for me, it didn't work, and I wrestled back and forth, but I ultimately, when we get to rankings, have Kills just slightly higher because at least it's, even though it's bad, it knows what it is. I mean, it's bad. It knows it's bad, but well, you know what? On to you can't talk about the Halloween franchise without talking about the one that started it all. Look at that young Jamie Lee Curtis there.
That is my favorite shot from the entire movie.
That was a pretty good one. So, I'm not dismissing, as one of our fellow writers mentioned, Black Christmas, but I think if you were thinking about the modern slasher film, most people, Halloween may not have been technically the first, but it is the one that most people think of as really kind of creating this franchise and jump off. We saw Friday the 13th come after it. We saw Nightmare on Elm Street come after it. It kind of built this franchise model.
I think no younger audiences are really going to disagree that, yes, there was X-Men and Spider-Man, but in 2008 you got Iron Man and The Dark Knight, and that has been superhero movies ever since. This is the Iron Man and The Dark Knight of slashers.
I guess I'm old enough that I still, X-Men was the
I know, but that's like, that would be the Black Christmas, like you Blade, maybe, if you want to throw that in, as the one people don't really think of, but
there was a lot, there's a lot to get into. I've always appreciated the simplicity of the original. You have Donald Pleasance kind of wandering around through the neighborhood half the movie trying to find Michael, which always makes me laugh a little bit. But you have the basically the 3 friends, and this also started basically the formula for the original slashers. When I was in college, I wrote about the evolution of slasher films, but this is one of the ones that really created that set of rules that Scream so famously kind of eviscerates when they rewrite the rules. You have these 3 friends. One of them is kind of the virginal babysitter who's actually watching the kids.
Hang on, I'll be right back. I'm kidding.
We have the, virginal babysitter who's actually watching the kids, and then her friends who are engaging in what you would consider, untoward behavior. And they're the ones that get gotten. We get a little bit of the backstory of Michael at the beginning. But mostly he's kind of this faceless evil machine. You hear actually Dr. Loomis many times in this film say he's not a man. He's something other than a man. And it gives him this kind of supernatural presence and strength, to the point where when Laurie puts a knife into his neck, you're still not surprised that he comes back up. When Dr. Loomis empties an entire revolver into him, you're not surprised that he still comes back up, because he isn't a guy. He's something else. He's this kind of killing machine. And to me, that always kind of cemented the film. We'll talk a little bit about what John Carpenter originally intended for the Halloween franchise when we get to our next installment, but I have always had it up there among horror films for me. It's a classic. I've always appreciated it. It's, I think, an iconic film. Yeah, of course, you got to give it the thumbs up. And I think Jamie Lee Curtis does a great job, but it's now been 44 years and it still remains wildly popular. What has been the enduring legacy for you, Eric? Obviously, you've gone through all 13 of the films. I see like half of the collection there behind you.
16 films I have
sold you
watched
short
leading up to this, because There are unrated cuts, producers cuts of the Rob Zombie 1 and 2, and then there are unrated director's cuts of Rob Zombie 1 and 2, and then the producer's cut of 6. And I do have a version of a ranking that includes those. I'll just go ahead and get out of the way for later. The theatrical Rob Zombie 1 is my absolute worst. And then like Rob Zombie 2 is like right above it. But out of the way, we're not talking about that. We're talking about Halloween 1, which of course is a 2 thumbs up with an asterisk, because of course I have to complicate things. So Halloween, I don't know why, because it's so telegraphed all over the movie. Maybe it's because growing up I could only see it on TV, but the kids are asking about the boogeyman the whole movie. Loomis is going on about the nature of evil and true evil and all these things all throughout the movie. But in my head, I just immediately thought, oh, he came from an insane asylum. He's crazy. How's he crazy? He has a wire crossed where when he gets horny, it's instead rage and he wants to kill someone.
Which, I mean, sort of could be fair. Why that first happened with his sister is, well, maybe it is a Game of Thrones kind of thing. He's the original Lannister.
You know, it's weird. He starts breathing harder when people are getting. It's not. I 100% read the movie as an adult the way you're talking about, but it's funny how watching this again now, and these 4Ks are absolutely amazing. By the way, if you want to have a really immersive experience watching these, Shout Factory always does a job taking the original film, reprinting from the film to scan them, and it like that shot you showed of Michael Myers coming out of the dark, he like sinks out of like inky lights off black. It is one of the most haunting things that's effective. And that's the thing. Halloween, the opening, great. Little dated, but great. That first half of the second act, a lot of long takes, a lot of walking, a little bit of tension building, but if you already know what's happening in the movie,
maybe that's where Aaron Sorkin got the walk and talks from.
This is it. Canon. That's the thing. I also love that when Red Letter Media points out, like around when he's hiding behind the bushes, you can see smoke in the screen because John Carpenter's off camera, like chain smoking. But
well, and people forget he made this on a shoestring budget.
Yeah, oh my gosh, they literally the leaves that you see because it was summer are painted brown. They had like 200 leaves. They had like 2 or 3 trash bags of leaves, dumped them, and had to go collect them all before any wind blew them away in order to make it feel like fall. But it's that midpoint of Act 2 where people are starting to die and tension is really ramping up until really the things that happen with Laurie Strode are paced masterfully. There is dread like seeping from it. The score, oh my gosh, why is it so comforting to listen to a score that makes you feel like you're going to be murdered?
So first of all, I looked it up. The budget for this film was $300,000. I don't even know if they shoot.
The budget for Green Lantern in 2011 was $300 million.
Yeah. So you don't get what you pay for, unfortunately. But we've looked at a couple of classic 70s films now in our episodes, Jaws and this one. You know, there's so many, when people talk about score is okay, score really matters. It can set the tone. That Halloween score, you can hear 2 notes of it and know what it is. And it's been 40 years and it still sets the tone for something unsettling happening.
And just something brilliant about the dialogue that I think people keep trying to do and keep not sticking the landing is that idea that Laurie has sunk into such fear that she has become sort of a child at that moment where she asks, was that the boogeyman? And it's like, that just tells you the impact that he had. Now he's nowhere. The ending is one of the all-time best endings of movies. So yeah.
My favorite fun fact though, do you know how many days they said it took to write the screenplay?
I know it took like 2 weeks for the second one. I don't know how long for this one.
John Carpenter said it took approximately 10 days.
Totally.
300. I mean, this was the definition of a shoestring. But you know what? He had a vision for what he wanted it to be. And that's, we'll turn the corner here as we get to the last individual film that we're going to look at, which is Halloween 3. And a lot of people a lot of people that really dislike Halloween 3 Season of the Witch do not understand what is happening, and they don't understand Carpenter's original vision. John Carpenter's idea, and he made tons of these kind of low budget horror action films. His original idea was that Halloween was going to be an anthology franchise set in and around Halloween Day. It was going to have a completely different story and cast every time around. The original Halloween, made for $300,000, grossed $70 million. So they were like, you got to make us a sequel. So he went ahead and they did Halloween 2, worked on the script. But with Halloween 3, he wanted to get back to that original concept. And you think of how prevalent these anthology ideas are now. Like Ryan Murphy has made his entire career off of a horror anthology. I think John Carpenter was ahead of his time in some ways. And in 1982, we got Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which is so disconnected from the world of Michael Myers that you literally have characters in this film watching the film Halloween on TV. It is about some kind of creepy Celtics. You have Stonehenge. You have Halloween masks that are getting sent out that are going to kill all your children. It's brilliant. It's completely campy. It is a 180-degree turn from the original Halloween, and I love it, but not as much as you.
Oh yeah, it's lower. I forgot where it is on your ranking. I guess.
I have it up there, but it looks like you had it a little bit higher.
See, when it comes to like Halloween movies, I don't separate them from movies at large. But I'm just gonna not try and justify this, right? Halloween 1, I love the idea of thinking about it as a standalone movie. It is so hard to separate my brain from the events of 2 or H2O or any of the sequels, Jamie Lloyd sequels,
or 12,
and whatnot, which I like those
12
too.
additional films.
Yeah, and this movie, I had one of the best experiences, and like, get ready to get jealous because I cannot believe this still happens in this day and age. My wife did not know this wasn't a Michael Myers movie. I watched it with her, and I told her early on, this is the one without Michael Myers, and she was like, "There's one without Michael Myers," and I was like, "Oh, get ready!" Oh,
well, it's not really without Michael Myers because he's on TV.
Right. Yeah, and I will say, the things that punch this up for me is the absurdity. Like, it's so absurd that I adore every bit of it. Why does everyone want to bang Tom Atkins? What is the director and writer's obsession with having everyone want to bang Tom Atkins? I don't get it.
And do we have any evidence that he's actually good at his job?
Yeah, he just up and leaves. He's like, well, this woman's attractive.
He's like a deadbeat father. And binge drinker. He's chain smoking the entire time.
Yeah, and like his wife, who plays Annie in the original, like her kids are watching the movie. I wonder what it was like for her to watch it and like see that actress. Just kind of, oh goodness gracious, he just dips and goes off to go handle this issue that he understands nothing about. It's so bizarre. And the sets and everything are just kind of like, you can tell like when they're in the factory that it was a warehouse and there's a factory set in the middle. And I don't know how.
I like how they don't even bother to explain how they would have stolen one of the pieces of Stonehenge.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I mean,
how'd you get it?
Yeah. Like we replaced it with a foam rock. Nobody knows because no one else will touch it. There you go.
No, because they have on the news that one of the stones is missing from Stonehenge. So everyone knows it's missing, but
an opening scene where a kid falls on a piece of Stonehenge and they find out it's been stolen and replaced with styrofoam would be so on point here. And like, I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, this movie just goes all out with what it is because they were fighting for this concept. The studio had even less faith in this than the first Halloween. And heck, Halloween has always had trouble, like it's, I think even the first Halloween was such a slow road getting to have the reputation that it had. And now they're like, nope, let's shoot that reputation again because we are committed to this idea. And after that, you know, they kind of got steamrolled and the rest of history happened. But it's just, the masks are iconic. The
The theme song.
music, that theme that you all heard at the
Silver
beginning,
Shamrock.
it's just as annoying as it is like exciting to hear it and know that it's being referenced somewhere. Like, I honestly believe that Halloween 3, even up to date, may have the best gore special effects and physical effects across the whole franchise. Like, that bit where a guy's nose is grabbed is one of the most, like, skull itching, that noise that they make and the way that it crunches, like, gives me the willies. Like, so much stuff. My wife's whole experience with this is, what the hell am I watching? Over and over again until it ended.
Because, so we talked about the original Halloween, they had a budget of $300,000. You know what the budget was for?
I want to know so bad.
$2.5 million.
Oh, so it's like,
And
you take the same. Oh,
they call it, you know, it's considered somewhat of a failure because it didn't make the money that the other two did, but it still made $14.4 million at the box office. So it's not like they lost money.
Right.
But unfortunately, it was kind of critically panned at the time, and audiences were like, yes, audiences probably justly felt about that movie the way I felt about Halloween
Ends. It's happening. See, that's the funny thing to me. And this is what makes me passionate as a film reviewer, is when a movie comes out and I see a reaction like Halloween Ends. That's why I said I respect your opinion, because it's grounded in the details that a film reviewer, like, I think you can probably trust your gut based on what you're saying with Halloween Ends. But so many people are picking out, like, you can't do this with Michael Myers. That's a rule. They broke the rule, so it's bad. And, like, so many people are doing this. I'm like, you guys not remember? Is there no lesson of history here? Like, the movie intentionally is like, hey, remember Halloween 3 in the opening credits? And it's sort of, And, yeah. Halloween 3 is another full 2 thumbs up for me, just because where it lacks in a sort of atmospheric, grounded, actual feelings of horror, it makes up for in just being bonkers.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. It's unexpected. I mean, you have like the ancient Celtics trying to create some kind of like blood moon festival using Stonehenge. You don't see it coming. You're right, though. Tom Atkins, his character is just, I mean, in any other film, he'd probably be the definition of a loser. But it works. The whole thing works. The score works. I like the opening credits. I like the kind of way it ends. I would just wish we could know what John Carpenter would have done if he had gotten to keep this anthology going, because you got to imagine that he had more ideas.
The music would have continued to be like a banger. Like, people would have collections of the vinyl of all of the music from all of them, because it would have been unique, fresh, engaging, and it would have told its own story. Like,
another gift he gives to everything. Well, we've referenced looking at these kind of 3 films out of the franchise. I think before we wanted to look at our rankings. So, Eric, I'll put yours up first and let you start going through your definitive Halloween franchise rankings.
All right, I'm going to keep this brief because this is real weird and out of my wheelhouse to do this. All right, so you got Halloween 1, followed immediately by Halloween 3. I'm going to watch those 2 back to back because 3 saves 1 to me from feeling too attached to other things, so I can enjoy it as a standalone. But then Halloween 2018 is a movie that is a showcase for the entire franchise. You got the Halloween 3 masks. You got the one-take shot from Halloween 2. You got a plot with the police getting on board that's similar to Halloween 4. You got you've got references to H2O with the bathroom scene. You've got references to I mean, I know they straight up said they wanted to reference every movie that had come before, and some of them are less
which is
obvious than
ironic,
others.
since they also want you with the plot of Halloween 2018 to pretend like none of the other films happened.
I know, but that's the thing that works about it, though, is they come back, they rebuild Michael as a terrifying thing, even though he's a 60-year-old man, and just the reversal of the ending, like the mirrors that could have just come off as a gimmick, just works for me. So then I got to go straight up at number 4 with Halloween Ends. I don't know what to tell you. It's something about the atmosphere. I really realized I wanted to rewatch it. So few movies that come out recently in the last couple of years, and I want to rewatch this just because I want to feel what it's feeling. Like, it's not the greatest movie of all time. It has significant issues, but as opposed to Kills, I'm comfortable in this environment, and it feels like not a Halloween movie, but it feels like Halloween time. So that's, yeah, I gotta see the graphic. I can't remember them. I'm sorry. So H2O immediately follows that, and in fact might be a little bit better. I love Josh Hartnett. I think Laurie Strode gives an extremely powerful performance in that, partially because a part of her knew that was going to be what she thought was her ending to the franchise. And there's a whole thing we could go on with what happened there and with Resurrections and whatnot, but another day. And Halloween 4, I think, is amazing, well lit. I love the actress that played Jamie Lloyd. When a child actor can perform that well, I'm always stunned by it. And then the last movie that I would put on the like to watch it side of things is the producer's cut of Halloween 6. Just because it tells a whole story. There are things that just are fractured and don't make sense in the theatrical cut. And even though the violence is up there a little bit, I wanted to include this one because this is the only director's cut I included in my ranking because it's so different. There's an entirely different the last 20 to 30 minutes of the movie are all complete sequences that don't exist and were completely reshot in the other one. So like it's only 2/3 kind of the same movie than a complete deviation. So on the bad side, rattling them off. Oh no, I like Halloween 2. Sorry, I do.
It's okay.
I like it. It's basically like we got to get on the slasher trend that we started, and so they up the violence there. And some of those special effects are a little bit like giallo film, like really bright red bloods, and a little bit thoughtful in how they're doing the makeup and stuff like that. It works. I like that one. So Lie, that's actually the one on that side. So now you have to deal with the theatrical cut of Halloween 6, and just the characters are not as engaging apart from Paul Rudd, Loomis, and the lead actress. And those three, almost save the movie for me, but then there's the producer's cut. So why? I love that one shot of Paul Rudd trying to take out the door lock, and he's losing his mind. But Halloween Kills is next, and I wanted to put it lower. But I gotta admit that the 1978 stuff and some of the ideas in there just work better for me. So then Halloween 5, the movie that they literally made as a placeholder because they were like, what are we going to do? They shoved the Man in Black in there and said, we'll explain it later. It literally has no drive and purpose. So, Then Rob Zombie's Halloween, I specifically note the unrated producer's cut. Around the time I discovered that you can sneak and watch movies online, I watched it, and a weird thing about this movie is that the version of this movie that leaked online was the unrated cut. So I had seen the movie, and when I started hearing people talk about seeing the movie, they described the beginning very differently. And I was very confused because I had liked the movie I'd seen as far as being like, I'm not like old, I'm not like tied, I'm not old. That's awful. No, but like, it's 2007. I think I was like too young to appreciate what worked about Michael Myers. And so here I'm just watching this interesting movie where like a full half of the movie is just leading up to him being a killer. And then the second half is a bunch of screaming. Then you have Halloween Resurrection, and then you have Halloween 2, the theatrical cut, which if you can't say anything nice.
Yeah, I mean, man. All right, so I will dive into mine. I'm a little less. I have a little fewer of them that I would actually consider that I like. So the original one, I've mentioned how much I enjoyed that. I was surprised by Halloween 2018. I like that a lot. That was actually one of the more fun theater going experiences I've had with a modern horror movie. Very nostalgic, kind of going back in. You really felt the nostalgia of that. That was one of the reasons I liked H2O, which I have third. I also thought it was kind of cool that Jamie Lee Curtis is in there with her mother, Janet Leigh, who was in Psycho. Those kind of cool nods. Those three I actually think are good films. I love Halloween 3, as we just mentioned. I wouldn't necessarily fight you that it's a good film. All right, I know you're sad. I enjoy the heck out of it for what it is. I understand the people that think it's cheesy. I actually think there's nothing wrong with cheesy in a horror movie, but those kind of four distinguish themselves to me. Halloween 2, I don't mind Halloween 2. It reminds me a lot of what you get with Jaws 2, where it was like, oh, this was so successful, we need to make a sequel. It's almost the same. We made a few, like in Jaws 2, you're like, why did they not believe that Chief Brody when he says there might be a killer shark? Why are they telling him this has never happened before? Why do they not believe Dr. Loomis and Laurie Strode that this supernatural being might be out there to kill? They just had a killing spree. So I like that. You and I ironically have 465 in the same order. I've heard people talk about how much they like chapter 5. I like nothing it. I guess you could make it a convincing. I feel more strongly that 4, with the kind of return to Michael Myers, is probably the best of those. Second wave, and it's Daniel Harris who plays Jamie Lloyd, who actually then sadly makes an appearance in the Rob Zombie Halloween because for reasons surpassing understanding, she got cut out and recast in Halloween 6. So then I have Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. I'll be honest, I'm not wild about either of them. Halloween Resurrection, I don't think I've ever been so angry before we've actually gotten to the core of the movie. I haven't even had time to process that Busta Rhymes is in the movie with how angry I am with the way they did. Someday I would like to see an in-depth interview with Jamie Lee Curtis about why she even agreed to do that. Go ahead.
I'll make it real short and sweet. Jamie Lee Curtis signed on to H2O only under the condition that it is actually a conclusion to the movies. And it was one of those bait and switch things where after they got her on board, the contract ended up finalizing requiring that she come back for another one. So she tried to pull out of the movie, and they made her a deal that she would get to say a little bit of what her role would be. And she said, I'll only come back for another one if you kill me. And she demanded they not tell her how they were going to keep Michael alive in H2O. So that she could have her experience of H2O. So, anyway.
It's horrible. And it, shockingly isn't even just horrible because of Busta Rhymes. So it's something. I've mentioned my biggest qualm, but I have two qualms with Rob Zombie's Halloween. One, they are grotesquely violent. It was during that era which you saw horror kind of shift into the torture porn kind of genre, and he really steers into that. That is his brand. Some of his original movies I've thought were more clever than others, but they are definitely all on that pretty violent, gross violent, and that is not really my thing. That I'm pretty anti that. But I also spending a long time trying to psychologically deconstruct Michael Myers didn't really work for me, but it worked better than Halloween 2, which I will admit is the only film since I've been a film reviewer that I did not complete. I walked out in the theater and I didn't even really feel bad about it. It was going so gross and I was so put off by it. I went and took a bathroom break and came back for 10 minutes and I was like, life's too short for this. And I went home and watched 4 Harry Potter movies as a palate cleanser, like back to back. I was like, give me child Harry Potter. And if you know me, I'm not even a fan of child Harry Potter, but I was like, give me child Harry Potter, give me a Charlie Brown Halloween special. I am not ready for this. So I included it last on my list, but
that just helped me add something to one of our future shows. Thank you for that.
I live to help you. So that is a kind of our in-depth look at the Halloween franchise. One last question for you, Eric. I meant to ask this up top, but I think it's better that it comes here. Halloween Ends has ends in the title. Now, the 13th film to carry Halloween as a name. We all know it probably isn't going to end, but do you think it should?
No, but the way that I'd like to see it survive is not through continuing to circle the point of recapturing what's in the original. I want people to go play with it. I want them to be honest in their marketing and let expectations be set. But I'm a little jaded about the whole machine of movies having to make more and more money. So I'm not the best when it comes to what it should be. But I know that, there's been a competing thing in marketing where Universal puts out posters and trailers and everything they can to make you feel like it's the showdown of the century between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. But most of the creative team have all been out and saying, like, no, we named it Ends because this is the end of our story. There's no one assuming that you're going to take a property and go, you know what, we might make money off this in the future, but let's not. So,
I would say after some of the critical and commercial reception, they might not be as opposed. I'm going to go the other way. I think it's time for new stories, new monsters, new creative visions. John Carpenter, it's fair to wonder, would he have gotten to make his movies if he emerged in today's market? Because they don't let these new ideas come. There, you get a lot of these giant franchises. We've seen 13 films over 44 years carry the name Halloween. And with the exception of Season of the Witch, even though you see Michael Myers, they've all been about Michael Myers. I think we've seen every possible iteration of his story. And that's where I even go back to in Ends. If you wanted to look at the nature of burgeoning evil, if they would have wanted to look at that, doing that with Corey, that might have worked if it was its own original film. I'm ready to not see that mask anymore.
Yeah.
To be over.
I'm on board with that, but let me throw this at you. If for the last couple of years, studios had looked at the pool of movies being made, okay, and I'm not saying that this is a great idea because you could end up in a Cloverfield territory, and I don't want to go that way, and decided one of these movies we're working on, that's going to be the Halloween for this year, and embrace the anthology idea so that people could have, your Marvel Cinematic Universe. They don't even have to be connected. Collection of movies. It's like, that was the Halloween of this year. That was the Halloween of this year. And all of them basically have sort of like a collector's label of Halloween 2024, Halloween 2025. But the title is its own thing. Like if it was Smile this year,
Yeah.
or Barbarian, it would have just called it like Barbarian Halloween 2022, Like I'm saying, like, the idea of a Halloween movie being a staple, yes. But I 100% agree. Go do something and have fun. Don't stop trying to discover why people will come back for Michael Myers more. Like, yeah.
Yeah. But at least we have some classic films. I still enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
That will wrap it up for us on this episode. We will be back in a few weeks looking at the future of Wakanda and Steven Spielberg's childhood, among other things. Until then, I guess we will see you at the movies.